Hi, everyone, and welcome back to OncoDaily. My name is Ter-Azaryan, and I'm your host for today. Today, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce our guest, Dr. and Professor Muss. Hi, Professor Muss. It's very nice to meet you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here, Emma.
So before we start, I would like to just briefly introduce our guest. I think everyone in the field would know Professor Muss, but I will say that Professor Muss is the Mary Jones Hudson Distinguished Professor of Geriatric Oncology at the University of North Carolina School of Medicine and the Director of Cancer and Aging Program at the UNC Lineberger Comprehensive Cancer Center. Hi, Professor Muss. So, our first question that we would like to ask you, and our audience would love to hear, is how did you first become interested in oncology? And what drew you specifically to caring for older adults with cancer?
Oh, great question. So I became interested in oncology when I was a intern in training at what's now Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. And I had a terrific professor named William Maloney. And unfortunately, he's passed on. And he was a hematologist, and he took care of lots of leukemia patients. And I just loved going with him on rounds. I was an intern and resident there. I went into the military, but when I came back, I did a fellowship there. And I just loved taking care of those cancer patients. Even though at that time, we were just getting modern therapy and beginning to see some really good results. So he was inspirational. He knew every patient, no matter what walk of life they came from. And on rounds, they took hours. He'd stop and talk to everybody. And I said, I want to be like this man when I grow up. And so I ended up going into hematology oncology. I was at the Brigham, the Dana-Farber. And then subsequently, when I was in my early career, there was a gentleman named William Hazard, and he is one of the eminent geriatricians in the United States. He wrote the first textbooks, and he was like proselytized everybody. He wanted everybody in the world to be a geriatrician. So when I was younger faculty, he came to me and he said, I'd love for you to do a project on cancer in older people. And so I worked with a resident. Her name was Kathy Chrisman. She's an oncologist now. And we wrote a paper on breast cancer in older women. And what we did was we had information from studies we had done. My other great boss, a guy named Charlie Spur, was a terrific leader. And we had those old IBM punch cards that you see for all our patients. And we looked at a group of older women, and we found out that they did just as well with their metastatic breast cancer and their chemotherapy, including intensive chemotherapy as younger people. So I wrote that paper. It got published in JAMA. And next thing I knew, people were calling me, asking me about geriatrics. And so Dr. Hazard, who is, I think, still with us, was instrumental in getting me interested in it. And now I really didn't know much about it. And I had to learn a lot on the job. And I just loved taking care of the older people and loved their stories. They had great stories about their lives, and they weren't as anxious as, let's say, a younger person who was worried always about the cancer. Are they going to survive it? Who's going to take care of my family, my children, my parents, whatever? It was just a different group, and I loved it. And then I realized that there was very little research on older people as far as treatment. All the studies are done on younger people. And so I just got interested, and then I met wonderful people along the way who mentored me or I partnered up with, and that's how I got going. And I've loved it. It's just been a great career. I love the old people. Now I'm one of them too.
Thank you, Professor Muss. It was a very interesting start of your journey. Looking back at the early stages of your career, was there a defining moment or mentor who pushed you toward geriatric oncology before it became a recognized field?
Yeah, it was Dr. Hazard. And then I had the privilege of working in the CLGB, which is now the Alliance, a cooperative group. And I met a fellow there named Harvey Cohen, who was a world-renowned geriatric hematologist oncologist. And we had the opportunity of forming a committee there called the Cancer in the Elderly Committee. It wasn't even a committee. No one even knew what we were doing. And Harvey and I teamed up. I learned a ton from him. We ran this committee for 20 years, and we're able to develop a lot of young people and publish a lot of good research through the group. And he was very instrumental. And then along the way, there was people like Lodovico Balducci, who's retired, and the late Arthi Haria, who was a wonderful young woman who passed away tragically at a young age, but who taught all of us so much, even though she was a lot younger and always considered us a mentor. So along the way, I've had all these wonderful people to team up with. And then at UNC, Dr. Busby Whitehead, who was just stepped down as our director of geriatrics, she and I were able to collaborate and get funded for training programs and things. So it's been a wonderful group of people to collaborate with. Geriatricians are really fun to work with. They're kind of got soft edges and they're easy to talk to. And they, although in the United States, they don't always get paid very well, they frequently love what they do. They love the patients and the care they give, which is a gift in this world.
Thank you. Professor Muss, would you please tell us more about CALGB Breast Committee and your involvement in it?
So I'm still a member of now the Alliance, but at that time it was called the Cancer and Leukemia Group B. And I was a member of the Breast Committee and subsequently over the years got to co-chair it with Dr. Larry Norton, who is one of my idols too and great mentors as far as teaching me about breast cancer and tumor biology. But I slowly morphed into that role, and it was great because we were able to mentor a lot of young people and do studies in dose-dense chemotherapy and proof of principle studies for drugs, which are very hard to do today in the current environment. And through that group, Dr. Richard Shilsky, who was the head of the group then, gave us funding to form a Cancer in the Elderly working group. And so that was the beginning of our Cancer in the Elderly group in CLGB, where I work with Dr. Cohen, and we were able to bring great people in working in the group, surgeons, Peggy Kemeny, and other people interested in older people. And slowly over the years, we brought in wonderful people in there, Dr. Haria, Heidi Kleppen, other wonderful geriatricians that built it. And now it's got terrific young people, Dr. Jatoy, Dr. Sedrak, Rachel Friedman, and terrific people. So we built that committee, but really, I think the key to success in life is to pick wonderful people who are smarter than you around you. And I think we both did that, and it worked out very well. And we still attend some of the meetings. They're still doing great things. Even though there's more interest in older people, and the average age of cancer in the United States of diagnosis is about 67, there's still lots of room for us to improve our knowledge of caring for these patients. We talk a lot about it, but we still need more studies and more trials and more knowledge to optimize their care.
Do you see chemotherapy-induced aging as something we can fully prevent in the future, or will the focus remain on predicting who is most vulnerable?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is a major interest now in what we call senolytic drugs. And this is a fancy term for drugs that prevent aging. And if you go on the internet and put, I want to remain young forever, you'll get thousands of hits for all kinds of supplements. But we really don't have any proven agents yet looking at preventing aging. Actually, with a colleague of mine who's the leader of a study through the UCLA, we're looking in women with breast cancer after chemo, and who are a little bit fatigued. We're looking to see if if an antioxidant, fisetin, which we've had made to FDA purification, can make them feel better, maybe retard a little bit of the changes in aging they've had from treatment. We don't know. So there's a lot of interest in this, a lot of great biology on aging, and I think we will get good clues. The worst problems we see are in children with cancer. So one of the miracles of modern oncology is the high cure rates of childhood cancer, especially childhood leukemia. But unfortunately, when you take those children and they're about age 35, maybe 10 to 20% of them have died of causes not related to their initial cancer. They've gotten second cancers, or they've got diseases of aging. They've got heart disease, diabetes, other problems related to aging. And we've shown that the chemotherapy in those patients, wonderful work by a colleague of mine at UNC, Dr. Smitherman, we've shown that chemotherapy really accelerates cell senescence. We measure the senescence in peripheral blood T lymphocytes. And we've shown that those cells are old, but senescent cells aren't dead, and they make terrible stuff. They make all these inflammatory markers, which cause second cancers, relate to other diseases of aging. So that would be a good group to test some of these drugs in, but it's kind of complicated. We're trying to do some in adults. We'd love to be able to think of ways that we could maybe not reverse the changes of chemotherapy on cell senescence, but prevent it from accelerating, or at least keep it under tow for years to come. We've also shown, for instance, if you measure oxygen extraction, like in women with breast cancer, like Lance Armstrong, you put a bike on and you see how much oxygen can the body use, that women who've had chemotherapy for breast cancer, they're about 10 years older as far as their oxygen use is concerned. So a woman who've had chemotherapy, who's 55, has the oxygen consumption of a normal woman who's 65. And that oxygen consumption is related to your longevity. So there are we know that chemotherapy ages people, but whether we can prevent it, we've tried like walking during chemo and other things. Very hard to exercise people during chemotherapy. It sounds good, but the drugs make people frequently fairly sick or fatigued. And it's easy for us to say, oh, you got to get up and walk or go to the gym, but people don't do it, myself included. So I think that we'd love to get in prevention, but we need to know more. For instance, there might be adverse effects of these drugs on the chemotherapy drugs themselves if you gave them concurrently. And then if you give it after, that might be a better strategy, but by then the damage may have been done. So it's a delicate balance, and I'd love to believe that someday we will know the mechanisms, the molecular pathways well enough that we can design drugs that might retard the negative effects of chemotherapy on aging, without affecting the effectiveness of the chemotherapy or immune therapy or whatever treatment it is themselves. That's a great question, and a lot of people are getting interested in. So maybe we need some of these very wealthy billionaires, from California who want to live forever to support our research. It would really be great because they have a different self-interest in it, but whatever we learn about them might help our patients too.
Thank you, Professor Muss. I would love to ask you about your work-life balance. I mean, as we know, you have an intense academic and clinical career. And how do you maintain the work-life balance, and what hobbies help you disconnect from oncology?
Yeah. Well, the major reason, I married the right woman. So my wife Lorena and I have been together 55 years, and she keeps me in check. And you have to have a lot of good friends. We've learned in taking care of older people, but it's true. It actually may be more important in your generation, because a lot of my friends can't use their phones when they're out, on a date. But social interactions are important, having a good friendship core. It's not doing medicine. So I love to go fishing, fly fishing. I do a lot of that. I go woodworking with people. I love to go to I don't love to go to the gym, but I go to the gym and, have friends there and I, feel it's, helping me out a little bit. So I have a lot of hobbies. I'm never bored. And, and I think you gotta, one thing as you get older, you gotta have things that are meaningful to you. And so all these different things are meaningful in some ways, but social support, often overlooked, is one of the most important things for human interactions and at all ages, but especially for older people. And fortunately, my wife and I have a lot of good mutual friends and it takes our mind off things, off the realities of everyday living.
So when I was doing a little bit of research, I saw that you served in Vietnam and you were awarded the Bronze Star. How did that experience shape the way you practice medicine and lead teams?
So before I went to Vietnam, I was a trainee. I was a intern resident in a very good hospital, and I always had smart people around me. So if I didn't know something, and there was a lot I didn't know, I could turn around or go down the hallway, and there was someone else who helped me. He or she could say, "Oh, I know that," or "You got to look at this." When I got to Vietnam, I was a general medical officer. I was assigned to what's called artillery battalion. And so I was the only doctor with 500 really guys in the jungle area with artillery. And I learned a lot about myself. There was no one I could turn around and ask questions to. So and we didn't have the internet and things. I couldn't look up everything, but I had a few good textbooks that I guarded like gold, and including one on how to set fractures. I never got very good at it, but I did a few. And I learned about myself, and it gave me more confidence, not that I knew it all, but that I could function myself and get along. And I also got a sympathy for young people, who serve their country, whether it's the military or the Peace Corps or do something for their country, because they're really making a great service. And that's another discussion, but I really got a respect for that. And my Bronze Star wasn't because I stood in front of a machine gun. It was because there were a lot of drugs that got into Vietnam. And that's just part of the modern world. And we had young people who were out in the jungle, had nothing to do all day. It wasn't like World War II where everybody was moving every day or moving either in one direction or another. And they were getting bored and they were getting into trouble. But they weren't bad kids. See, these weren't hardcore addicts and things. And so we had a few of them, and the leadership of my battalion, my group of people, and I decided that rather than take these kids and send them home dishonorably, that we would bring them into a big air base that we had a little headquarters on and keep them around a few days in a hospital and see if they withdrew. And if they didn't, we talk with them, try to do and send them back out to the field. So we did that. And we probably over the year, there may have been 50 or so young people we did this to. And so they didn't end up with a bad record. And they turned out to be very helpful young people. And then they didn't have a dishonorable discharge. So they could avail themselves of education and other things. So it's not a very, heroic story like other people, but I think we helped a lot of young people. And so the colonel of my unit was very grateful that we did that, and didn't send people home and have all these problems. And so they gave me the Bronze Star. I was kind of surprised, but it's been nice to reflect on it.
What are the 3 books, maybe medical or non-medical, that have shaped how you think about life, aging, or medicine?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I was thinking about that, when you kindly sent me the questions. One of them books I like is by a fellow named Viktor Frankl, and it's called Man's Search for Meaning. And I don't know if you've read that, but everybody ought to read it. It's a sad book. He was a psychiatrist who was at Auschwitz, and survived it. And people said, how did he survive? And he said, the way you survive these things is you have to have something in life that's meaningful to you. It doesn't have to be grandiose. It can be wanting to see your wife and children again. It can be wanting to paint the greatest picture. It can be wanting to be the best nurse or plumber, whatever. You got to have something there that you wake up and say, that I really want to do this. I will tolerate anything to do this. And I think it was a wonderful book that way. And I reread it just a few months ago, because when you get older, you start worrying about these. You start not worrying, but you think these existential thoughts. And then the other one is a book by a guy named Dan Kahneman, and he recently passed away. He wrote a book. He won the Nobel Prize for in economics, because he did things like how people think about things. Like, why do people drive 50 miles and use $100 worth of gas to save $1 on a plant, at a big sale? And it's called Thinking Fast and Slow. Thinking Fast and Slow. And it's a wonderful book. It's not an easy read. It's not something like you fly through, but there's a lot of good things there about how we think and make decisions. And then the last thing, actually, when I thought about it, is a poem. So there was a very good poem, and it's called Joseph Heller, or Joe Heller. And it was written by the great novelist Kurt Vonnegut. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he was a great author. And he wrote a poem about Joe Heller, who wrote a book called Catch-22. Are you familiar with that? See, I'm learning a lot, right? This a book about, kind of no matter what you do in life, there's a catch to life. And so the poem just ends that the poem is about Joe Heller, and he's a very famous writer. He's very famous for this book. And they're at a big party at a very rich billionaire's house in Long Island in New York in the United States. And Kurt Vonnegut essentially in a poem says, hey, Joe, how does it feel to know that this guy made more money today on, in the stock market or whatever he did, than you'll make in your whole life on the book you wrote, Catch-22? And the answer was, Joe looked into me, I says, I've got something that this rich man will never have. And Kurt Vonnegut says, what's that, Joe? And the answer was, the knowledge that I have enough. And I think that is a great way to live, Look at what you got, and sometimes it's enough. You don't need another thing on Amazon or another big car or whatever. Just look around, appreciate what you have, and take advantage of it. So I like that very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Muss. I will definitely look it up, the books that you mentioned. Thank you very much for the recommendations. And my next question would be, what would be your advice to young oncologists?
Yeah. So I think it varies worldwide, but medicine is getting very corporate now. If by that I mean, at least in the United States, a lot of medicine is now being run by large companies, private equity firms, and doctors have lost a lot of. They've lost their autonomy for a lot, and we have. I can't comment in, Armenia or I don't know enough about Russia where it is, but there's a lot of what we call burnout in the United States. And a lot of people, and it's not because of work, like going in and working longer hours. The reason is, I think people feel they're helpless in the system to really do a good job. They came in wanting to help people, and they're pushed to see higher volumes of people and things. And I think the joy of medicine, and I'm the son of a dentist and the nephew of a general practitioner in New York City, was to get to know your patients, get to know them as people, get to know what they did. What do they do? What's their family life like? What are their hobbies? And to do that, you need time. And those relationships are not fostered in current medical systems. So my advice to young people is try to resist that and do whatever you can to get to know your patients so you build up a trust. And I think those relationships will make you enjoy medicine and get back the old-fashioned medicine that we had, which wasn't perfect. You can do many more good things for patients today than you ever could in my parents' time and my uncle's time. But they knew all their patients and they became friends with them and they could provide them better care. And I think if you can make that time or figure out a way to do that in your system, you're going to have a better life. And then I tell you, if you're interested in research, clinical research, patient-related research, that you need to make your clinic your laboratory. And by that, I mean today, at least in the United States, if you're a cancer specialist in an academic setting, and now in many big practice settings, you specialize in one disease, lung cancer, breast cancer. And if that's what you're doing, make sure that your interest and research are focused on those patients, not leukemia or breast cancer. You won't be able to keep up. And this way you can build a clinical practice, and there's always questions and research you can ask. And if you've got the trust of your patients, they'll be happy to help you answer questions and do other things. So I think hang in there, get to know your patients, and make your clinic your laboratory are probably my two best pieces of advice.
Thank you. And finally, from your perspective, who is someone in oncology or aging science we must interview and why?
Yeah, well, there are lots of people. I made a little list, and I think one of the people I would pick is Harvey Cohen. He is a professor. He's still very active. He's at Duke University. There's so many wonderful people. I don't want to forget anybody out, but I'll pick some of the older, people. Right now, there's people like Supriya Mohili at Rochester. There's William Dale at City of Hope. There's my old friend Lodovico Balducci, who's kind of really terrific guy, been the forerunner of so much here. There's Dr. Exterman in Tampa. I don't want to skip anybody. Dr. Jatoy at Mayo and Clinic, and wonderful people. And then there are lots of younger people. My friend Mina Sedrak, and who's doing great breast cancer. But I would, if you want an overview of someone who's done this a long time, I think Dr. Cohen, or you might enjoy talking with Dr. Balducci. They are really, getting all up there. Like they're in my age group, and they've seen the emergence, and you probably get some better insights than I've given you as to where we're going.
Thank you so much, Professor Muss. It was a great pleasure and honor for us to talk with you today. It was very interesting and inspiring to hear your journey. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to OncoDaily on YouTube. Hit the bell icon to stay updated.